Do you ever wonder what would happen if, well, if...
If you give a dad a podcast.
I'm what you call a nerdy fan. I nerd out at this stuff hardcore.
You'll hear me talk about anime on here. You'll hear me talk about Power Rangers. You'll hear me talk about wrestling on here.
Okay.
I had an axe handle with a Twisted Tea on it. It was right after that Twisted Tea video went viral. And man, they went out and grabbed it and smacked a dude in the head with it. It was so...
That's great. I'd like to think of this podcast as a nostalgia moment for me. It's a show where I can talk about whatever I want.
I'm a human animal chiropractor. There was a picture of me. It looked like I was on the side of a ramen box over in China. But
So I took my kids with me to Comic-Con.
I thought that was really cool.
Well, I don't know if my wife should listen to this podcast.
We'll cut that part out.
You hope. Be like, and then Robert said this.
If You Give a Dad a Podcast. Available now on all podcasting platforms.
Did you ever wonder what could have been with the AWA had things gone differently? Had their fortunes gone differently? Had certain wrestlers not left and perhaps more money would have been at the disposal of the Ganyas? Well, wonder no further. You can go to Brad Drake's YouTube channel and experience the 1987 Supermod for yourself, as Brad Drake starts off in May 1987 along with Greg Gagne, Baron Von Raschke, Vern Gagne himself, Nick Bockwinkel, Larry Zbyszko, Kurt Hennig, and a slew of others as he plays and saves the AWA.
Hello, everyone. This is Brian Ferguson, the host of Bumps and Thumps, the Talk of Wrestling. I want to tell you about a new podcast out called Fouls Count Anywhere. It is a classic pro wrestling podcast that brings you the legends of wrestling with true wrestling fans Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. They bring on guests that are legends in this business, and as well as wrestlers of today, promoters, referees, you name it. They have them on there, folks, and I encourage you to listen to them. If you're on YouTube, watch them. They drop every Saturday. They have their podcast. They drop it in the afternoon. So look forward to that podcast coming out. Falls Count Anywhere podcast with Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. Folks, you will not be disappointed. I guarantee it. And enjoy the podcast. Hey everyone, this is Brian Ferguson, the host of Bumps and Thumps, the Talk of Wrestling. We are on today because of you. And in order to continue the podcast and get the guests on here that require some financial compensation, we're going to need help from people like you. Right now, we're attempting to get our YouTube videos monetized through YouTube. We need 1,000 subscribers in order to do that. So I have decided that if the 1,000th subscriber will get a free t-shirt like this from me and come on the show as a guest on the podcast. So subscribe today, and that 1,000th subscriber will be contacted by me and be given a t-shirt and come on the show. So subscribe today. If you already have, thank you. If you haven't, please do, and tell your friends and subscribe today, and we'll talk to you soon, and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to another edition of Bumps and Thumps, the Talk of Wrestling. I'm Brian Ferguson. My guest today is considered one of the greatest wrestlers from the mid-1980s until the 2000s. He is a multi-time NWA WCW World Champion, multi-time NWA WCW World Tag Team Champion, and the longest reigning U.S. Heavyweight Champion in history. And he's authored a book called Wrestling with the Devil. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Lex Luger. Lex, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, Brian. Glad to be here. Thanks for the great intro, man. Wow, you made me sound really good.
Well, you were really good and still are, so I appreciate you coming on today. Let's talk a little bit, if we can.
Thank you.
You bet. Let's talk a little bit about growing up. What was your upbringing like for you? And where'd you grow up?
Okay. Go ahead. I finished what you were saying.
I was just going to say, Lex, just tell us how you grew up and where you grew up at, sir.
Okay. I have great upbringing and beautiful. Buffalo, New York,
Okay.
home of the Buffalo Bills. Go Bills.
Yeah.
And the love sports, as you can tell. Buffalo's a great sports town. We had, at the time when I grew up, we had an NBA team, the Buffalo Braves. We had the Buffalo Sabres, which we still have, and the Bills. So, man, Buffalo's a huge blue collar, great people. They call it the city of good neighbors. It was just a great place to grow up. Great family, my mom and dad. Mom just passed recently. My dad passed a while back, but just I got a brother and sister, older brother and sister. We just had a great upbringing, great town. I just fell in love with sports and started playing all the sports. I ended up being a football player, but just great childhood memories growing up in beautiful Buffalo.
Awesome. That's great. Let's talk a little bit about, obviously you're very athletic. You played sports, you said, went to college. Did you go on a football scholarship or did you? Okay.
I did. My parents were all musical. My dad was a virtuoso pianist.
Oh, wow.
My sister, incredible musician. My brother, my mom's dad played in the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra. He played 12 instruments, all self-taught.
Wow.
So I was the black sheep of the family wanting to do sports. I had to forge my permission slip to play football my freshman year. My dad didn't even know I was playing football. My dad thought, because why would you want to run into other people? That's like a Roman gladiator. Why would you want to do that rather than play an instrument? So he actually made me do one musical thing in high school. When he found out I was playing, he goes, if you're going to play sports, number one, you got to get average A's in school.
Wow.
He said number two, which was good. Number two, you better carry an A average, 90 or better. He goes, number two, he goes, you got to do one musical thing. So I ended up singing in the high school choir.
Wow.
Man, I used to get razzed for that for all my football, basketball teammates. Man, they used to put us in robes for the Christmas concerts. Man, unbelievable. I actually did pretty good at it. I can't, my voice has changed through the years, but I was actually, I don't tell many people this, Brian, but I was in the Sweet 16 Choraleers in high school, 8 guys, 8 women. It was like the elite singing group.
Wow.
Yeah, so I actually ended up doing pretty good with the music thing.
Wow.
But I was in love with sports.
Yeah.
I originally in middle school wanted to be a Olympic decathlon champion.
Oh.
Then I wanted to be an NBA star, and I stopped growing at 6'4". So I go, well, I don't think there's too many 6'4" power forwards in the NBA.
Yeah.
Although Charles Barkley, he wasn't much taller than me. But anyways, I found out that I was best suited physically for football.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to playing at college at Miami, Florida. I went to Penn State my freshman year, but growing up in Buffalo, which I loved, I was wanting to get away from all that cold weather.
Yeah.
So I went 1 year at Penn State. I immediately transferred down to Sunshine U, the University of Miami.
Yeah.
And that's where I did my college. While I played there a year, got kicked out, which is a whole other story. But how did you get kicked out of University of Miami back then? I go, it wasn't easy. I kind of dragged them to death until they had to throw me out of there. Then I ended up going up to the Canadian Football League early. I was 19 at the time.
Okay.
You couldn't play in the NFL yet. After I get kicked out of Miami, and ended up playing there for almost 3 seasons. I went to Green Bay for almost 2 years. Then I went to the USFL, which is back now.
Yeah.
And I played for the Tampa Bay Bandits, Coach Spurrier, the ball coach.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to outdraw the Tampa Bay Bucks. And Tampa, they loved us, the Tampa Bay Bandits back then.
Yeah.
And then I ended up with Memphis Showboats, played with Reggie White. So
Okay.
had a pretty colorful 7-year career. But in Memphis, Memphis is a Jerry King of Lawler wrestling town, right, Brian?
Yes,
So
sir.
everywhere I went, because I loved working out in the weights, even in the football locker room, I had quite the physique by then. I was always breaking all the bench press records, and I loved working out. Trained under a world champion powerlifter back in high school, Don Reinhouse. So I loved the gym.
Yeah.
So football was, I was even even in the football locker room had that physique going on already. And they're like, man,
Wow.
but you should be a wrestler. But everywhere I went in Memphis, they asked me if I was a wrestler. I go, no, I'm a football player. What are y'all talking about? And but that kind of planted the seed. So in the off season, I was living in Florida at the time for having played for Tampa, and I walked into Championship Wrestling of Florida. They introduced me to Hiro Matsuda, who trained Hogan and broke Hogan's leg, and trained a bunch of the top guys. Mr. Wonderful Pondorf. Hiro Matsuda fell in love with me because I loved working out. He worked out with me, did everything. I was in the ring like in the off season, like 4 months later.
Oh,
I
wow.
made my debut, and the rest is history. It was a 15-year, like 4th of July fireworks. Wrestled every top guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you name it. 4 Horsemen, the Slam heard around the world on with Yokozuna on the Intrepid, the Lex Express, Monday Night Wars. Man, all the way from '86 to '01. Wow.
Yeah, you had an amazing career. I want to talk a little bit about training under Hero.
Okay.
I heard, I know about the Hulk Hogan leg breaking.
Oh, the hero's legendary for a lot of reasons, but
yeah.
He did everything with you. He was incredible. Okay. Every push-up, every Hindu squat, you had to do like 1,000 Hindu squats without stopping before he'd even take you in the ring.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he turned the air conditioning off down in Tampa. He had a textile factory. He had you run 5 miles in the afternoon and come back and do all your push-ups and Hindu squats until you could do 300 push-ups with him doing 30, you doing 30, 10 sets. And then 500 Hindu squats and 500 jump squats. Took you about an hour and a half, 2 hours to complete.
Wow.
And he wouldn't even take you to the ring until you could complete that. And very few guys could ever even complete that. There'd be him and I would do that. Be a puddle of sweat on the floor in that textile was probably 120 degrees in there. I mean, like it was unbelievable. Huge puddle of sweat. But what a great guy. Trained guys, Brian, just for the intrinsic admiration, appreciation of what he was a judo champion and knew all the hooks stuff. That's how he broke Hogan's leg. Fortunately, he didn't do any of that to me. He liked my work ethic, and I told him, "Do I have to learn any of those hooks and stuff?" He goes, "No, wrestling's changed." He goes, "You don't need to know that stuff." And but I graduated. He told me I was probably the fastest graduate.
Oh, wow.
From starting the training, not to brag, but I will.
There you go.
From starting in the sweat mill to making my debut as a wrestler, he said I was the fastest anybody's ever done it.
Wow.
It was about 4 months.
Yeah. Wow.
And we took you in the ring, Brian. He would have you for a whole week just hit the ropes and take turnbuckles to your whole body. Your back, your sides were completely purple and blue.
Yeah.
I mean, then he'd have you hit the ropes in that following week and take your own bump, jump as high as you can in the air and take bumps and learn how to take bumps for a whole week. I mean, he had a progression, old school. And then he'd start an arm drag. You're the one being arm dragged. And then he'd slam you. He'd have you take all the bumps from other guys for a few weeks. And then he'd start you giving other guys the bumps and how to do it. He had a progression. Then he finally took you into chain wrestling.
Okay.
In the ring, progression. And he'd work it starting out maybe 30 seconds, then a minute, so you could get up to like 5 minutes of chain wrestling. Then he'd finally let you get up on your feet and do a few high spots and things like that, and leapfrogs and tackles and stuff, drop downs. But yeah, that was like a 4-month process, but he was very thorough. He even, for the first time ever, managed me. He was so good with me. He wanted to make sure, because he felt like I really kind of rushed Lex out there.
Yeah.
But I think he's ready, but I want to be ringside for you in case you get lost, which I did. And so, to help you along. So the first a couple months I was there, he actually went to all my matches and went ringside with me. Hero, the legendary Hiro Matsuda.
Yeah.
So
wow.
I am so thankful. I have so much gratitude
Yeah.
towards. I never wanted to charge me a dime or a penny to any of the guys, not just me.
Yeah.
He just loved wrestling. He loved the sport. He loved the fans, and he wanted to see guys he thought had a lot of ability thrive and carry on for like the next generation. What a guy.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of good things about Hero. He's one of the
Yeah.
few trainers that taught you the right way. I mean, back then, even, you know, I'm talking Hero, Vern Gagne, Eddie Sharkey are the names that come to mind for trainers. So you're very fortunate.
Yeah.
And
I mean, one of the things, Brian, with Hero, this isn't an excuse for my limited repertoire in the ring that I'm accused of, but Matsuda drilled into me. He goes, look, he goes, drop kickers and high spot guys. You're very athletic, but you have, he says, they're a dime a dozen. He goes, but you have a look,
yeah,
a powerful look and physique. He goes, I want you to work a certain way and do less is more with you. I want you to do clotheslines and just more of a ground attack, because I don't want to see you climbing up the ropes, because I want you to be a fundamentally sound, snug worker who looks authentic. He goes, you're explosive. When you come out, he goes, well, when you hit a turnbuckle, I want you to move the whole ring if you can. I want you to explode off the ropes and explode out of the corner of so many turnbuckles and clothesline them. And he said, I want you to do less things with a lot of authenticity. He goes, that's going to be your ticket.
Yeah.
Even the way you sell, I want you to show your body. That doesn't mean you don't sell, but
right.
He goes, but he goes, I want you to learn to relax your body. Though you're not. I don't want you to be a robot. Too many muscle guys are robots in there. Because I want you to learn that, because you got a great body. So when you sell, I want you to really loosen up and sell. And that I struggled with that, like a lot of the football players and guys do, because you're worried about how you look, and you tighten up and don't have that free flowing kind of Barry Windham sell, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, I never got to that level, but Matsuda wanted me to always. He goes, I don't want to ever want you in your career. They're going to ask you to do a lot of stuff. He goes, I want you to keep it more basic. He goes, that's going to be your money.
Yeah.
That always was kind of in the back of my mind. That's my excuse for never being a really advanced worker in the ring.
Hey, I got to tell you, for your size, and you had a lot of athletic ability. And I know people say you were kind of, stiff or whatever, but, for your size and what you did in the ring, I mean, I was, I grew up in the 80s watching, when you came out. I thought
right.
You were fantastic. You were one of the first ones with that physique and being able to do what you do, because like you said earlier, a lot of guys were stiff that are that big and that muscular. So kudos to you, my friend. I want to talk a little bit about Florida.
I did the best I could. I'll never be regarded as far as my in-ring work or Mike as one of the best ever, but I did maintain Matsu says, take care of your body. That's going to be your money ticket. And he was right. I mean, I had 15 years, worked every top guy. It was never, and I don't mind admitting it, one of the top workers. And in retrospect now, I think I maybe could have honed in. I took some of that for granted because I got on top right away. There's some things I think I could have worked harder at and been better at that I had the ability to do, but kind of took for granted.
Yeah.
But overall, I did always have that. Once again, the back of my Matsuda said, don't try to do too much, So that always resonated to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
getting back to Matsuda, what a blessing to have him be the guy who broke me into training, because, boy, he trained a lot of big stars.
He did. He did.
Scott Hall, he trained Scott. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. He is a well-known trainer, no doubt. You were in Florida, you got on top pretty quick, like you said. I remember you in the magazines. You were in Florida, you're the Southern or Florida champion for a while. Then you moved. I got a credit there. Bill Apter.
Yeah. And Georgia Paltano and those photographers in the magazine guys. Man, even when I was in Florida, they were putting me all over those magazines.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, man, you're all over which back then, those were big. as far as getting
Mhm.
guys over and who they put on the covers and the mags and everything.
Yep.
So I owe a lot of gratitude to Bill and George and them as well, because
Yeah.
they plastered me everywhere
Yeah,
when I
it's
first
just,
started, which I didn't realize at the time. So I
mhm,
didn't know a lot about wrestling coming from football, but
mhm.
that was big, Brian.
Oh yeah, Lex,
Yeah.
it was huge because I'll be honest, unless the magazines were out, I mean, we didn't get Florida. I'm from Wisconsin
Oh my
originally.
gosh.
Yeah,
Are
Green
you a
Bay.
Packer fan?
I am, yeah, yeah,
Oh man, I
yeah,
love Green Bay.
yeah. So uh, I didn't know about you until the magazines would come out and you were on there. I was like, who is this guy? You know, and then we
Yeah.
started getting cable, and all of a sudden you were in World Championship Wrestling in Atlanta, and you came on, and I want to know what that feeling was like for you when you went in, and how did they approach you with, okay, you're going to be a horseman? How did that come about?
I didn't really understand. I knew it was big. Everybody, that's big. You're going to be a horseman. I go, yeah, is that big? They go, I couldn't have told you what Arn or Tully or JJ looked like. I had wrestled Rick down in Florida, but I'd never watched the Four Horsemen.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went up there for my first TV tape, that's the first time I believe that I actually met and knew what JJ and Tully and Arn looked like, and Ole.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. Can you believe it?
Wow.
But Rick went back after he wrestled me in Florida and gave me such, who I owe great, unbelievable gratitude as well in the business, along with Dusty, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
When talking up so much with the Crockett's that they couldn't wait. They couldn't wait to bring me in, and Ole had wanted to just be part time, so they said, why don't we, we could give the Horsemen a different look with the muscle guys. The Road Warriors were big then.
Yeah.
The muscle type physique was just starting to come on. Hogan, of course. So like, man, let's give the Horseman like a muscle guy.
Yeah.
That might be something good. And boy, I had no idea how big,
Yeah.
how huge
Yeah.
that was till I got there.
Yeah.
And the first time I went on TV, they go, what's your finish? And I go, well, I do like forearms and clotheslines. I go, well, Dusty and Flair, more Dusty came up with a backbreaker. Hey, pick one of these guys up in a backbreaker. This is right before I went out for my first match on the 605 TBS taping. And they go, because I wasn't a horseman yet. And they go,
Yeah.
and Dusty and Flair looked at each other, oh, that looks good, because it showed my body when I got a guy up on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And I go, that's it. I went out and did the power slam torture rack, and the rest was history. But Dusty and Flair spent so much time. And Tully and Arm, we used to go to a barn outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, where I moved to, and work with me on during the week on wrestling.
Yeah.
Because they worked at such a high level.
Mhm.
They didn't want me to be a total embarrassment out there with them. And but to think about, those guys have families and stuff to do when they're not working. Back then we wrestled, like those 3 or nights a year. They would get up in the morning and take me down wrestling, and the way
Wow.
Flair and Dusty worked with me, I'm trying to learn how to talk on the microphone and give me a finish, and that's the storylines. And
Yeah.
man, like you said, what a huge break to break in with the Four Horsemen, have Flair and Dusty micromanaging my every move and interview. Wow. Unbelievable.
I was gonna. Well, you answered two of my
So I
questions.
can put on the map, right?
Right. You answered my question about the torture rack, where that came from. So, who came up with your name, the Total Package? Who started that one? Was that Dusty?
Dusty.
I knew it.
Oh, he's so creative. He goes, listen, I don't do the good Dusty, but I want you to be the brains and the brawn. You went to college, and I want you to listen, baby. I want you to go out there and talk articulate and use big words. He goes, you use big words, use them big words. He said, he goes, I want you to gloat over the fans that you're smarter than everybody, you're better built, and you're this and that. He goes, I want you to be the whole package out there. And then Flair and him were joking around, yeah, the total package. And there you go. So they came up with that and go, yeah, let's call him, let's his nickname be the total package.
That's
like
awesome.
Brains and brawn and smarts and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which I didn't mind, right?
Yeah, right.
Who wouldn't want to be called the total package? So I didn't argue with him on that one, Brian.
I bet you didn't, Lex. I bet you did not.
So Matt Suda always told me to listen and don't open your mouth unless you have to. So
Yeah, right. No, I get it.
yeah.
So you escalated really quickly in Georgia.
Oh man.
You became the U.S. champion.
Just by association, right? I mean, being a horseman. Then Flair the world title. I had the U.S. title, which ended up being the longest to this day, the longest reigning U.S. champ. My first really well, I won the Southern title in Florida,
right.
but the U.S. title is I can tell you right now, I've had tag team world titles and Crockett Cups and but my all-time favorite title is sentimental favorite is the U.S. title. It's the only title I have at my house here.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's
the
awesome.
original Crockett NW. I have a perfect replica made. Reggie Harp's my belt guy. You know Reggie, right?
Yep. Yes,
and
I do.
he got me made an authentic, like perfect replica of the U.S. title. I got it sitting about 30 feet from me at the house right now.
Wow.
That's very special to me. When I go to speak engagements at schools with kids and when I go to corporate or churches when I speak, I mean, I take them. They'd better get a picture with the belt than me. I mean, they love that. You know, everybody loves to get a picture holding the belt, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But I had the U.S. belt, totally in honor of the world titles, a tag team champions, right? So we had the world title, the tag team belts, the U.S. belt. We were the bad guys everybody loved to hate.
That's right. Yeah. It was great. I remember it so well. You know, Lex, can we talk a little about when you won your first world title, Great American Bash against your good friend Barry Windham there? What was that moment like for you when you got that title?
Well, of course, it was a big moment. It was supposed to be with Flair, however. So it was also kind of nerve-wracking because we had to really last minute Flair had gone on, which I never had people ask, well, you think he ran off? I go, no. I go, Rick did what business-wise, what Rick felt he had to do to take care of his family. That was the business end of wrestling. It wasn't personal against me. Rick and I always got along great.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful to Rick for all he's done in my career. I wasn't mad at Rick at all, but we didn't even have a belt made. So we had a faceless kind of belt. They said, don't hold it up towards the hard cameras. So it was kind of nerve-wracking. They brought in all the belts. They brought in Harley Race, one of the greatest ever in Baltimore at the Bash there. Because to make up for it, they gave me a bodyguard with Mr. Hughes, and man, they gave me all the bells and whistles, and they had me turn heel on Barry with with Harley's pile driver. So we did the very best we could with it, as far as the adversity of Flair not being there, and we made the best of it. But it was still a very special moment, obviously.
Yeah.
To win my first world title. There was a picture of me with it in the back that either George or Bill Apter took, and I love that picture. I was covered in sweat with my yellow tights on. It's one of my favorite photos that I've ever seen out of the wrestling magazine. So yeah, very special. Your first world title.
Oh yeah. Sure. Yeah, I can imagine. Later on, a little bit later, you went to the WWF, right? And you were known at first as the Narcissist.
The bodybuilder first, for a year.
Yeah, you were that. And then
I had to non-compete, Brian. So I had to sign my first year there as a bodybuilder because I couldn't. WCW ended up suing me over that, but I digress. But I settled out of court.
Yeah.
But I did a 1-year bodybuilding contract. I had the motorcycle wreck and couldn't do the contest. But then, gosh, by a miracle of God, I was near fatal motorcycle wreck. I think about 8 months later, I made my debut with Bobby Heenan.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was a Royal Rumble out in Sacramento.
Wow.
So yeah, that was quite the transition. I was ready. WCW is was in kind of disarray at the time. With the talent and the guys, and I'm not saying anything that most guys wouldn't agree with at the time.
Right.
And they didn't have a clear direction, and they were in transition. So I thought that was, if I was ever going to go to WWF and try to make it as a top guy there, that this was my chance.
Yeah.
So there I went as the Narcissist. Now originally I kind of wanted to stay the total package like Luger, but Vince likes to trademark you.
He does.
Originally he wanted to call me just the Narcissus.
Okay.
And I was like, man, I don't like the sound of that. So we compromised and said the narcissist Lex Luger. So Vince kind of actually met me halfway on that.
Yeah.
So I go, well, Vince, don't you think the fans kind of, I'm not like a brand new guy. The fans kind of really know me as Lex Luger Total Package. So if you're going to call me the narcissist, which wasn't a stretch for my character, because when I was a heel, I can be pretty arrogant, right? I was told I was also be pretty arrogant in real life back then. So I go, so I don't think the fans would not buy into me being called the narcissist, but if you just obliterate Lex Luger, some of the fans, there is a crossover from WCW to WWF. So Vince bought into that. He was flexible. So that's how the narcissist Lex Luger was born.
Okay.
I love doing that. I wish I could have done the narcissist for a year or two, but
Yeah.
Vince thought that Hogan was not coming back, and Brett had talked about retirement.
Oh, wow.
So he's
okay.
like, I need a baby face. I need a baby face. So there you go. Slam heard around the world, Yokozuna, and I was on the bus.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
That
The
was
bus.
a dramatic. That was dramatic. He brought me in the office, Vince, and he was like, I'm gonna have you slam Yokozuna. I go, yeah, but I'm the narcissist. He goes, we're gonna put you in red, white, and blue, and you're gonna slam them, and you're gonna get on a bus, and it's gonna work. I was like, yes, sir. But I had my doubts. I'm like, man, that's awful quick. But
Yeah.
when Vince makes up his mind,
That's it.
Vince has made up his mind. He's the boss. So there we go.
Yeah.
So Lex Luger, made in USA, was born in the Lex Express.
Let's say, so, you got a little push there, but why don't
I got a big push.
Well, you got a big push, but I mean, you never got a title though. I mean, I'm wondering why that didn't occur. Is that, I mean, because I watched you back then, Lex. You were so good. You had all the tools. You had all the look, everything, and it just seemed like, I don't know. It just I thought you should have had a title, the Intercontinental title, the World title, something, and it just, for some reason, I just want to know, maybe you have a viewpoint on why you didn't ever have that opportunity?
Yeah, number one, people ask me, "Oh, did he promise you and change his mind?" No, I go, Vince never promised me the title. The only thing, Vince, him and I personally used to train at the gym together, and
Okay.
we were very close personally. So
Mhm.
Vince wanted, if I did get the world title, rather than Detroit at SummerSlam, he wanted to milk it, and he thought, because whenever I went to the Garden, Madison Square Garden, Vince always stood the curtain. I go, why does Vince always stand the curtain there? He goes, the Garden's the measuring stick. It's the barometer. I go, what do you mean? Go, Vince's dad always stood there and gauged the crowd when guys would come out, new guys or whatever. See how the crowd responded. Was there a buzz in the air? That was the benchmark.
Mhm.
How did the Garden respond to you when you came out to the ring? And so Vince, that held true. Vince said, if I put the world title, I want to be special, and if we do, I'd rather wait till WrestleMania 10, which was a big one,
Yeah.
in the Garden. Now things happened by the time Yoko and Taker had a great angle together, and Brett decided he still wanted to wrestle. Brett was a great champion. He's a wrestler's wrestler.
Mhm.
I think my angle I did with Borga, he was a new worker, and we didn't click real good.
Mhm.
There wasn't a real war going on back then, so instead of going back to being Lex Luger, number one, when you get built up that big, for some of the experts, and I'm not an expert on psychology of wrestling fans who are the greatest, thought, Lex, they should have put the belt on you at SummerSlam, let the balloons out of the ceiling, and then even if it was the Monday Night Raw,
Mhm.
a night or two later, had Yoko obviously somehow steal the belt back off you, and then do the angle and have your rematch maybe at WrestleMania 10. Let him run with Taker.
Okay.
So a lot of people felt that it kind of let the air out of the tires of the Lex Luger main USA character, and they left me that character. I always thought, I haven't really talked about this, but I thought I was going to do the Lex Luger, Lex Express thing, made in USA through SummerSlam and go back to being Lex Luger, the Total Package.
Yes. Yeah.
And when that didn't happen, I kind of had that lingering, let's not call it scent, of not coming through in the big SummerSlam.
Yeah.
I'll say scent instead of any other words. I kind of had that smell about me. And because the fans love you and they wanted you to win, and when you disappoint them like that, a lot of them say that could have been the kiss of death in your career. To get that big a buildup and not come through, that might have, a lot of guys wouldn't have survived that.
Yeah.
Because the fans get so into it, and it was such a big disappointment. So, but obviously my career endured, and I ended up, back at WCW, and remained as one of the top guys. Got to wrestle all the other top guys. So I survived SummerSlam. But I look at back finally, it was a great promotion. The bus thing was tiring and exhausting, but it was good at the same time. Obviously, like on the 80s special, they showed a lot of excerpts that they kind of added and made it look like I hated it. But really, there was a good response. I didn't hate it. I got exhausted sometimes and tired. I could be moody back then, let's put it that way. But they kind of highlighted that on A&E, which I loved. They did a great job in the A&E special. They really did. I had such a wonderful response from fans and everybody, even the other boys, about that A&E special. They're like Bully Ray from Sirius XM goes, he tweeted it right afterwards, and he said, "Will you please come on our program the next morning after it shows on Sunday nights?" Those A&E specials. He just Bully Ray tweeted, "Wow, oh wow," because people didn't know my personal life, tumultuous with drugs and alcohol, and then the spinal cord injury. When those things were going to go good, and then a spinal cord injury, paralyzed from neck down. He was just like, "Oh wow, I didn't know all that, Lex." And we had a lot of fun in the interview the next day. But the response from that special that showed my progression through all that and where I'm at now in my life, by the grace of God, is just I got an unbelievable response from almost everybody. But with that A&E, they did a really good job.
They did a fantastic job with that,
in my opinion.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I agree. When you went back to WCW, that great entrance in Mall of America.
Oh man.
And the pop that happened that night. How was that for you? Coming back to basically your stomping grounds where you basically got your big start and coming back. What was that like for you, my friend?
I was nervous, and I mean, they hid me. None of the boys knew I was coming in other than Sting. And I think they told Hogan and Eric, because the internet was just starting to hit back then. They wanted it to be a total surprise. So I was nervous and what the reaction might be, but man, the crowd had a great response, and even a lot of the guys in the ring even didn't know I was going to be out there. And around the ring, the announcers, so it was genuine, it was authentic.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the guys didn't know.
Yeah.
They brought me out from the other side of the mall to the position to go out and be like, "What's he doing here?" I just worked house shows and TVs for New York that weekend. There I am Monday night at the Mall of America. What's Luger doing here?
Yeah.
So the crowd loved it. It really launched me into just the honor to be a part of that whole Monday Night War thing.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. I mean, what a way to launch it. And it got a great response. It felt really good, Brian.
Yeah, I bet
it really felt really, really good. One of the high spots in my career for sure.
I got to tell you, when you walked out, I'll never forget it. I was watching it, and I was like, I just saw him on TV the other night in WWF. What's he doing there?
They had to pull me out of some of their other shows because they had me in the shows that they had pre-taped. They had to pull me out of them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow.
But it worked. I mean, you got, you had a good run, and then when you guys were battling, excuse me, the NWO for a while, and then you joined Wolfpack.
Right.
That
was huge. Wow.
Yeah, that was huge. Talk to us a little about how that run was for you. I mean, there was a big war back then.
I mean, my biggest, people ask me my biggest good guy babyface run. There's two. I'd have to rank the Lex Express thing third.
Okay.
And second place was my initial run when I left the Horsemen.
Okay.
That was a big babyface run with Flair. We sold
Yeah.
out everywhere,
Yeah.
and I was red hot as a babyface.
Yeah, you were. Yes, you
That's
were,
when I was
Lex.
really muscled up. Before I went to Vince, they did all the drug testing, and the fans were like, "Whoa, this guy!" I had a good run there with Nate. We sold out like everywhere, even head to head with WWF at the time, and we were both in Philly. We outdrew them. I mean, we sold out everywhere. Rick and I, the fans were hot for that run for me as a babyface. But really, the slow buildup of the Monday Night Wars with me as with Sting coming out of the rafters,
Yeah.
but me being kind of me and maybe DDP kind of being and at the time Big Show the Giant as the kind of the main faces. But man, I was like the guy got left laying every night, and it ended up being the fans really started like rooting for me.
Yeah.
That's the first time I got that real baby face sympathy behind me from the fans. They wanted to see somebody put a whooping or get something on the NWO. It was heat, 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 heat. They're throwing stuff. I used to be in the ring at the end of the tapings on at the end of the shows on Monday Night Raw, not Raw, Nitro. And the fans were so mad that we all got laid out at the end of the show. They would throw anything and everything into the ring. Now, NW to bail, I'd be covered in nachos and tobacco spit. I mean, they threw everything in there. Banana peels. I used to have to go back, and they want to try to leave the crowd happy. I used to go back and have to try to clean up and come back out and wrestle a dark match for the crowd.
Okay.
And get them a win. But I was so covered in junk that I started just going to the back and showering with all my boots and tights on and coming back out for the crowd, soaking wet from the shower, my boots squishing to wrestle because I couldn't get all the stuff off me. So, but I mean, that was, and that's bringing back around to your question, Brian, that was maybe, if you see the response when I wrestled Hogan for that surprise title switch on Nitro in Detroit, by the way, which is why I wrestled SummerSlam, ironically, and didn't win. That Detroit crowd came on when they realized that it was a title switch they didn't expect at all. And man, you watch the crowd in the background, they came unglued.
They did, yeah.
I mean, that was probably the biggest response I ever had on a finish as a babyface. So I was pretty hot as a babyface. That was probably my best babyface run there up until then. It didn't matter they took a title off me a week later at the pay-per-view. I mean, I had a good babyface run on the Wars, and then transitioning to the Wolfpack, reunited with Sting. And we've always, both in our personal lives to this day as we speak, a special friendship. And people, I think, sensed that when we were on camera together and worked whether against each other or with each other. People always associated when him and I do appearances together now once in a while. The fan response is huge. People really like us together.
Yeah.
And kind of like peanut butter and jelly. And so, I mean, for lack of a better thing popping in my head right now. So, that was the Wolfpack with Sting and I being there, and then Nash. Obviously, was such a big part of the bill. Him going good guy, basically, would end up with the Wolfpack, and then Conan gave it that rasa kind of coolness. Get that cool factor. That was a special group. It ended up being the four of us mainly, Sting and Ed Mach and some other guys there for a while, but really the four that when we'd come out, probably my biggest, not a Road Warrior pop. They have it, but when we came out as the Wolfpack, other than the Road Warrior pop, that was the biggest response I probably heard when we came out as a group back then. We almost could have maybe got a little more out of that, but that was huge. The Wolfpack was a huge babyface grouping.
Oh, it was. It was very huge.
Matter of fact, Brian, I just had action figures come out of Target, and I'm not promoting it, but with a NWA Wolfpack shirt, the black, the red and the black.
Yes.
And man, I can't stop signing those when I do appearances for WWE or if I go, they send you out for fan direct. I'm part of the WWE Ambassador Program. They
Oh,
send you out
okay,
to
great.
the Comic Cons,
Yeah,
fun fan direct. Boy, they come up nonstop with those action. They love those Wolfpack action
yeah.
figures.
I bet they
They
do.
get them signed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
that was a meaning. That was a hot faction
Yeah.
back. And when was that? 98 maybe.
98, yeah.
Wolfpack,
98,
yeah.
99, yeah. Yeah, it was
Yeah, you're bringing it towards the end. Yeah.
yeah. So you later on went into TNA for a little while.
That was kind of a sting call and was testing the waters.
Was just kind of
my life and maybe started to come back together, which it hadn't. But
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so that was just kind of a blurb in the screen, I guess.
It was. I was never negotiating with them or ever had it. My life was such a train wreck in my personal life by then.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the gym like I normally was. I wasn't focused on having any kind of rest. I was in a life and death struggle with all my bad choices at that point. Sting was trying to maybe help pull me out of it a little bit. He'd know better, but they never talked about like bringing me in and like to reignite my career at that point with TNN. Some of my injuries had caught up to me by that point too.
Yeah.
I had bad right hip that was really hurting me. So
yeah,
that was never meant to be like a career igniter. I always thought I could just reignite my career, but I was in a bad way back then. For sure.
Well, I just remember seeing you in the one of the TNA events, a DVD called The Asylum Years. You were in a few of those matches and stuff. So I just
a couple. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a very long stint, but a couple more questions. One is, what is one of your...
I mean, Brian, for all intents and purposes, my full-time wrestling career, and my career is basically 86 to 01. I mean, that was that 15 years. I did a couple of little things at TNA, a couple of independent things, but really my career was over when WCW. I never declared a retirement, but when WCW bought out, WWF bought out WCW. WWs, I get them confused sometimes.
Yeah.
But when we merged and got bought out, I had 2.5 years left on my contract, Goldberg and I, and I had way too much time, way too much money in my hand. I went down a total path so far away from wrestling into a life and death struggle that really that was the end of my actual active wrestling career. Because after that, when my life came back together in a good way, a powerful way, I had the spinal cord injury shortly after that, which obviously my career was definitely over then. So 01 was really the end of my career, at least from my perspective. In the ring, I mean.
Right. I want to talk about your book a little bit, Wrestling with the Devil. Tell us what inspired you, I guess, to write that book?
You know, everybody brings out a book, and I always kind of said, I'm not going to do a book. They do interviews and they're plugging a book on TV. And so I go, I was good at math, but I couldn't write an English class, a good paragraph. I could never write a book.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't on my radar at all. I actually went to a publishing company, to do a speaking engagement to share my story of where I was, my wrestling career, the bad times, now the good times with, and that they're a big company called Tyndale out of Chicago. They did Tony Dungy's books and football coach, a lot of athletes, and they're fundamentally they do all kinds of about a Christian based company. They wanted to bring me as a speaker to share my story, and the Christian lingo we call it a testimony, and so they brought me in for my testimony, and a few months later they called me out of blue and go, "Hey, we loved your speaking engagement, had such an impact on our staff." They had a big manufacturing plant that did all their books there, so they had like 1,000 people that worked for them when I told my story there, and they called me back 3 months later and go, we want to do your story. I was like, oh, wow, I'd never thought I'd do a book. I go, I can't write. I go, don't worry about that. We hire a writer. They come, they sit with you. They'll spend a couple of weeks with you. You tell your story in a tape recorder. They write it down. Then we go over everything with you and make sure it's in what kind of words you would use. They got post editing. with a publisher, and then you'll have your book. Don't worry about it. We'll walk you through it. So they did a great job. I'm
Wow.
telling my story. Really did.
That's great.
So yeah, I never thought I'd do a book, but there he is. Wrestling with the Devil, the Reign, Ruin, Redemption. They did a good job of telling my story. They go all the way through my childhood, kind of like the A&E did all the way through, but in more detail than the A&E special.
Yeah.
They did a really good job on it. Because
Books usually do.
I certainly couldn't have wrote a book, that's for sure.
Books usually tell the story better. One more question. I know you work a lot with Nikita Koloff, Sting, these guys. What are you guys up to now? You got some events coming up. I know some things going on with you.
Well, I always do things with Stinger, and we do events together and signings and hang out together, and we're such a great friendship. I'm so thankful for him. Nikita as well. He was a great mentor of mine when I got saved back in April 23rd of 06. He discipled me and taught me how to did Bible studies with me and taught me how to pray. And I was totally unchurched. I didn't know anything about the Bible or how to pray or anything. So Sting and Nikita, and God put so many great mentors in my life. But Nikita is a big mentor for me. We ended up putting together these man camps we do in spring and fall, where guys come and get away from everything for 25 guys, fall, 25 guys in the spring. And we love doing that. We will, a lot of times we'll do some, speak at some churches together or at some corporate functions together. And those guys are special. And I really enjoy doing it. I do some schools. It's not all faith-based. I found out I'm not looking just out for myself. I'm an encourager.
Yeah.
I like to encourage others. So I go in to speak with kids at schools and bring the belt in. They all love it. They show a little bit of wrestling. You give them a upbeat talk, and I go to corporate things, and they always want me to kind of talk about adversity and how I overcame being a world-class athlete to dealing with a permanent spinal cord injury, and they want me to tell me how adversity has helped me in my life. So a lot of corporations like me to come in and talk to their staff about that, of handling adversity in a positive way. And then, of course, I do the faith-based stuff as well. We're commanded to share the gospel, Brian. So I love every opportunity when a door opens for that as well, to speak at a church or a function on that, tell my story. So, and share the good news. So that's kind of what I do these days. I still work for WWE. I'm an ambassador now. I'm into my second 5-year deal, and they've been wonderful. And we do a lot of the bios for the guys. They bring you in and interview you, or they come to you, and they do merchandise. They put us in the 2K games, and that's a lot of fun. I love still. I'm very thankful. I still work with WWE, and they have me on board. So life is good, Brian. Life is good. I'm very, very thankful.
Well, we're very thankful for having you on, and I appreciate it. I know your time is precious. And again, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lex Luger, sir, thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it. Go out and buy his book. It's a wonderful story of overcoming a lot of adversity and how he's changed his life for the better, folks. And I'll have that information down in the description. So, ladies and gentlemen, one more time, Mr. Lex Luger, thank you, sir, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Brian, thank you for having me on. It is Thumps and Bumps, right?
Bumps and Thumps.
Bumps
and Thumps.
Thank you so much for having me on. You did a great interview. And
thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And folks, if you're listening, thank you. If you're watching, thank you. And if you do, please subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.